Hello everyone, my name is Ken, and the purpose of this video is to remind myself about the items action system that I just completed. So in a previous video, I uploaded the items and inventory system that I worked on, and this is just a progression from that system. So let's get into the demo real quick. So now that we have items that we can store in our inventory, we want to be able to do something with those items. And so what I came up with was, if I go a little closer, so if I equip this backpack, if I right click, you see I get a menu now. Now this menu can have as many options as I want, but right now this item has the drop, which works. For the apple, if I right click, we have an eat option and a drop option. So I can drop it, but I can also eat the apple. And this is kind of the powerful part of the system. So if I turn on the ability systems debug basic HUD, you can see that we have two attributes on the player. We have a health and we have a max health. Our health right now is set to 50. So if I right click and eat this, you're going to see the health go up by 5 for the next 3 seconds. And so it should be at 70 once we're done eating. So I eat it, you see this is ticking up, and now we're at 70. So the system itself is using Unreal Engine's gameplay ability system, using the gameplay effects blueprints. If you're not familiar with what the gameplay ability system is, you can look it up. This is the framework that was provided by Unreal Engine. It's a very powerful framework, and as it shows here, it's used for building attributes, abilities, interactions with actors that they can own and trigger. And it's just a phenomenal system. I believe that Unreal themselves uploaded a pretty decent tutorial. I don't know exactly how many hours it is, but I heard it's pretty good. The way I learned this system was through Stephen Oliberry, I think is how you pronounce his name. Apologies in advance if that's not how you pronounce it. I learned the system through this tutorial here. Fantastic. Uh, 10 stars. It's really, really good. So if you're interested, this is what I would recommend. And also read the documentation and also look for Unreal Engine's video tutorial because they have one out as well. Okay. So now let's get into how this works. So in our items data table, we have a new section called item actions. And I'm going to go back and forth in code and to the editor here. So in the back end, I have the items. And then in here, we have an item action. We have an item action handler. And then we have the actual handlers themselves. So you see we have drop item and eat food. Just have two right now. So in the item definition, which is here, has all these lovely member variables. We have a new one here called item actions that corresponds to this one here. You can see that it is an array of F item action, which is here. So if I expand in this and I expand in this, this is the one we're using for the drop. So we have a display name, and then we have an action handler. So we can select this drop down and select when you press the drop button, what's the handler? What should we do? And so that is this here. And you can see it is an instance strut of F action handler, which is here. We'll get into that in a second. When we select the eat food one, because the eat food handler is set up to use the gameplay ability systems, you can actually select multiple effects when you eat the apple. So you can stack effects. And right now we just have one gameplay effect, food apple, that we use, that we have selected. And if I open this, and then we can see that it is a duration type of an effect. It has a duration. We can also have infinite or instant. Infinite means it will live on forever until we manually say, we're done. And then instant is just what it says. It applies it instantly. So this one here is a duration, and the magnitude of that duration is set to be a float, and it's going to run for 3 seconds. So 0 second, 1 second, 2 second, 3 seconds. So that's 4 ticks. That's important because in the modifiers, when we select what it is that we want to modify, we're saying we want to affect the health and we want to add to the health. And that health is going to be adding 5 as a float. So that's 4 units of 5, and that's how we got to 70 from 50 earlier. So that's kind of important to note. The 0 second counts. You don't have to have that count, but in this instance, it does. So basically, this modifier or this gameplay effect will modify the user's health for 3 seconds, and it will add a float, which is going to be 5 for those 3 seconds, and it's going to equal 20. So when you eat the apple, at the end of it, you'll get 20 HP. This is pretty powerful, so we can do other things. We can set the max health. We can create multipliers, divide things. There's options for custom calculation classes, which you can define custom C++ classes to do all sorts of formulas. So think about, maybe the player has eaten something that's rotten. So now they have this infinite effect of poison or toxicity against them. And the only way to get rid of it is to eat some vitamins. And the vitamins will increase or decrease your toxicity or poison levels over time. And then maybe, while you're under the influence of these vitamins, you find something else in the game that could get rid of it instantly, or it could increase it. So you can stack. You get the idea. You can do quite a lot of complicated things based on how you design your game. And so this is entirely up to the designers, which is great because the class itself, which I'll show here, has just an array called effects to apply. And then when we go into the C plus or the CPP class, you can see that. What we're doing was just getting the instigator. We're going to get the player state, to get the ability component, and then we're going to apply that component here. And this is just a very basic eat food, but the designers can go into here, and since it's all data driven, it doesn't have to be 5 points for an apple. We could create one for steak or for a bunch of other different things. This is just kind of the base class to get the ability system affecting the attributes. And then we have all of the control over how we affect that attribute in this menu here. So that's kind of the power of gameplay ability systems, which is really, really nice. And then the other thing I'll show is, I guess I'll show the drop item. This is pretty simple. It's literally just getting the equipment component and asking the server to drop the item. And when we drop the item, it's going to make sure we're the server. It's going to figure out the drop location. That's going to check if this item that we're requesting to drop is in an equipment slot. And if it's not, it's going to check if it's in one of the containers. And if it isn't in one of these, it'll run its corresponding function. Then, of course, if not, we return false and throw a warning. Let's see, what else do we have? This is the base class for the action handler. You can see there's nothing going on here, but what's important to note here is that it's in item action. So this is an instance strut. So this is not a U object, which is a very heavy class in Unreal. This is a very lightweight structure. And when we define it as an instance strut and we create a base class, we can actually create child classes of this strut. So it's polymorphic. And that's how you can define multiple structures with a parent. So if you go into the drop item, for example, you can see that the parent class of this structure is this one. And this allows us to go into here and create all these different options as well. So we have the basic one, we have eat food, and then we have drop item, and then we have none. So this was introduced, I think, in Unreal Engine 5.0. It's a very powerful structure, very useful, and yeah, I think it's something to just kind of note. What else? Like, I think we can. So that's all that's going on in the back end. Let's talk about the front end real fast. I'll close all this down. There's only 2 widgets. So if we go to the item actions section in the widget inventory directory, you'll see that we have 2 widgets. One of them is just the root menu itself, and then the other one is each button, each selection, or each entry. Probably better to look for it in here. I actually need to rename this because I used to call it context menu, but now I'm calling it item action. So that's fine. And so you see here's our item action menu. So if we zoom in, you'll see that it's just a size box with the background border. And then we have a vertical box with 2 buttons. Well, these are just here for demonstration purposes. We actually append buttons to this list in code, like at runtime. And so if we go into, let's see, if I right click, we can edit this one. This is the button itself. Again, it's just a size box and then a button, and the button has a text. And then this is all controlled in obviously C++. So this is the entry itself. You can see this is the bind widget, the action button. This is the text. And then we're setting our widget controller, broadcasting when we click the button. And then in our inventory widget controller, down here, this is where when you right click the item, actually, if I show the parent class of, let's go here. So in the parent class of, this is the menu? I can't remember. Oh no, you know what? I'm sorry. It's just an item. So any of these items here. So in the parent class of draggable item widget, I moved a bunch of the code that was being duplicated in all the item widgets to its parent. And one of those duplications was the set widget controller. So we were doing this at every item widget previously. Now it's here at the parent. And then when you right click on an item, we have this native on mouse down button. Before we were just processing left clicks for dragging. Now we're doing right clicks. And so what we do is we make sure we have our inventory widget controller. We're going to calculate the position of the mouse and the widget. And then we're going to add a little offset. And then we're going to ask the inventory controller to show that context menu. And then we play a sound. So in here, when we request to show that menu, we do a few checks. We make sure that we remove a previous menu, make sure things are valid. We get the subsystem, we get the item instance, and then here's where we're going to populate the items. So you can see that we have this F item definition, and then in there is the item actions. Now, if you remember, that corresponds to this here. This is the item definition, and then these are the item actions. And you can see there's an array. There's 2 of them. So this, if I hover over this, this is the array, and then it's going to set the position of the widget based on what we calculated earlier, add it to the viewport, and then anytime we click the button, we're going to execute this function here through a broadcast. And that's where we ask the server to execute the action. I'll just show that real fast. And so the server is going to work out making sure that, you know, the item's legit, things are valid, like there's actually a valid action, because we're just sending the action index. We can't actually send the whole F item action across the network because you can't replicate instant struts, nor do you want to. You don't need to send all that data across the network, and I don't think it's serialized properly anyways or at all. So we just send an integer of, you know, which button was selected, and then we work that out here, make sure it's valid, and then we get the actual handler, and then we execute the handler. So that this execute is, it's going to take us to the base class, but this will execute if it was the drop item, it'll execute that one. If it was the eat food, it'll execute that one. You know, you get it. Yeah, so back in the widget itself, where were we? So yeah, in the draggable, we got our right click, which was going to show the menu. And then this context menu, I got to rename some of these. I renamed everything. I went from context menu to item actions, and there's still some things left over. But yeah, in here, so when we run the populate actions, this is where we loop through all of the actions that we passed in that was grabbed from here. So there's 2 here. So this will loop 2 times, and it's going to create 2 buttons. So you see that we're creating a item action entry button, and we're going to initialize that action button. We're going to, again, set a broadcast handler. So anytime the button is clicked, we're going to trigger this function, which again will trigger another broadcast, which the root widget will listen for. Or I'm sorry, it's not the root widget, it's the inventory widget controller listens to this one. And when we initialize this, we're just setting the action, setting the index, setting some text. Well, that's pretty much it. So that is the UI part of everything. And yeah, I think that's all I've got. I wonder if... No, I think that's everything. I think in another video, I'll go over the ability system that I set up for this game. But for now, I think that'll do it. And hope you enjoyed.